Hey, this is Ted from Death Angel, and you're listening to Focus on Metal.
Focus on metal!
Hey, Metalhead, Scott here.
And Richie.
And we are once again back to discuss more of Maiden. Pretty good time for that as well, as Maiden is off on another leg of their Legacy of the Beast tour. So, pretty good. And I think this one probably, like last time you were kind of, first three. But now I think with these, we start to get into prime Richie territory in the Maiden canon.
Yeah,
at least towards the tail end, kind of your entry. Right?
A lot of it is here in this episode.
Yeah,
not all of it, but a lot of it.
But I looked at it and went, "Ooh, this is definitely like all in your wheelhouse for pretty much all of this."
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So of course, start off right 1983 with Peace of Mind.
Yeah.
Right. So
anyone who hasn't listened to the first episode, we stopped on the Number of the Beast. So
we did. It was
starting in 83 with Peace of Mind.
We're harking back to the way we did Saxon, which is chunks of three. And so that's how we're doing Maiden too, with chunks of three. And
bit of cheating in this one though. There's four.
Well, there's four, but three studio albums, and we're just going to discuss a live album as well because it's got some more of a special meaning to Richie, and it's also I think it's a gateway to a lot of people too, and a lot of people refer back to this album as well as kind of like one of the first ones they saw or they listened to, and so there's a lot of import to that one. So yeah, why not throw it in?
We'll get to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, Peace of Mind. How'd you feel when Clive Burr was sacked? Because you were buying these albums when they were coming out. I wasn't.
I was. And I wasn't. I was really focused at that point, not so much on the drummer. It was the bass was the biggest thing for me at that point, and guitars. And so going from Clive and going into Nico wasn't as big a deal. Now, with hindsight, I look back and I can now see what Clive brought and then the difference of what Nico brought in there as well. I don't think, could they have continued on the way they did with Clive? No, so it was probably a good switch with what they did. But I wasn't really invested in Clive.
I think, generally speaking, what I've read, and you can disagree with me, Nico's technically a better drummer than Clive, but Clive had a feel that I don't think Nico has.
He did. And I liken that to like Bill Ward. So Bill Ward has that feel that if you were to, you bring in somebody else to play like Bill Ward and they don't have that same like jazz swing feel that Bill brings to it. You're right. I think what Nico brought is the technicality, and I think also he had more larger world experience in playing with some other quote-unquote larger bands as well, and bringing that where Clive was pretty much that, at the roots kind of guy with the band, and wasn't playing out in other places and in bigger bands before he joined Maiden.
Yeah. And of course, I run the Facebook page, and one of the things I do is I'll put up the dates and that bands play certain shows.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you look back on that period of Iron Maiden. The Number of the Beast tour, they did some shows in the US they were underneath 38 Special. At that stage, even though Maiden had a number one album in England, over in the US, they were still a very, very small act.
Correct.
And I think over time, people will lose their mind saying, how can Iron Maiden be opening for 38 Special? And I bet you they blew them off the stage. And Maiden probably had half an hour They probably had little or no PA, little or
Right.
no lights. They were very small, and
Right.
I'm sure the headline act did fine because 95% of the people were there to see.
They were. 38 Special
Special.
was huge. We went and saw them. Well, there's only one original guy left in the band, but went and saw them
That's more than some
at an outdoor venue last summer. And great, like Dead Nuts on, really well done. But I even remember doing stage crew for 38 Special, and they were huge at one point. And you got the 3 guitars were going in there, like all of that. They were a really big band. So, yeah, you're right. I think more of the people would have been there for 38 Special than for Maiden. Yeah.
With Maiden back at that time, the whole point of them was to get on a tour and just get some sort of exposure.
Correct.
I'm sure the traveling itinerary they had was horrendous, and it got worse as they got bigger with the rest of the albums after we're going to talk about tonight. But especially in the US, just go out, get them on a tour.
Yep.
Go out with someone, do shows, you know.
Yep. And the
These shows
difference is,
grind.
too, is like, well, Peace of Mind was what? It was, I think it went to, what was it? Number 3 in the UK, and it only got to number 14 here in the US. So big discrepancy there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And of course, this is the first record I think they did in was it Compass Sound, the Bahamas? I don't think they did Peace of Mind. I think Peace of Mind or Number of the Beast was recorded in England.
Right. Yeah.
So this one was in Compass Point in Nassau in the Bahamas, which I'm sure was a nice change for the band.
a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Recording back in dreary old England.
Yep.
Martin Birch again.
Absolutely. Martin
Ensconced.
Black
Nico,
Knight Birch.
and Derek Dr. Death Riggs. Another amazing piece of art from Derek Riggs. Like the gatefold sleeve on this is...
Yeah, this one didn't really... Yeah, so I've got the original single that had come out. And,
Okay.
you know, so this one, yeah, this cover to me, it didn't grab me like a lot of others. And I think part of it was very kind of monochromatic yellow and stuff. And you compare this to like a Killers and stuff, and it just didn't really catch my eye as much.
Okay.
But still a great cover. Definitely the back cover kind of leads you to be like, you know, oh, is Eddie Escape? What's happening? You know, like all of that, which is great Derek Riggs kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't have that. So yeah, even your gatefold, that's the sleeve picture on the original. Yeah.
The
And the
artwork,
lyrics is the other side.
and the artwork on the singles on this, the Flight of Icarus artwork is fabulous.
Yes.
What were the other singles on this? The Trooper,
Yes, exactly.
iconic
Yep.
piece of art.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't mail in the single sleeves and put all these apples in one basket.
I think I actually even have those singles over there.
and produce a great album.
Yeah.
Artwork. You could say that the single sleeves were better than this album cover.
Yeah, some of
people
them, yeah.
might say that.
Absolutely.
One thing, when I was doing some research on this, and to be honest with you, these albums are embedded in my brain anyway, so I didn't really need to listen to them again.
Yeah.
One of the things I did look at over these 3 records was the writing credits and the way they were done.
It's very interesting, even with comparing the writing credits versus the singles.
Yeah.
Is interesting too, because you've got a pattern on the first 2 and then a totally different turn on the third one.
Yeah, and what you'll find on these 3 records, or studio albums I'm going to talk about, is Steve Harris wrote the first song and the last song.
Yep.
Harris didn't really write with Smith and Dickinson.
Correct.
He did one track on Peace of Mind. Steve would write the odd track with Dave Murray.
Yep.
But other than that, he used to write on his own.
Right.
And then Adrian Smith and Dickinson would write together.
Right.
Or Adrian would end up writing some of the tracks on another album further down the line that we're going to talk about.
And then it's interesting. So like the first single on this one is a Dickinson Smith.
Flight of Icarus.
Yes. And then Trooper is Harris.
Yeah.
And it's the same pattern that ends up on Power Slave as well. So it's kind of interesting on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll get into that. But I wonder why Steve didn't write that much with Bruce and Adrian? Did it just not work? Because it still seems to be that way. There's more of a collaboration now, I think. And they've got more songwriters in the band now, because, of course, they've got Yannick writing material as well. But Steve still puts in the chunk of work on albums on his own. He's got the last 3 tracks, I think, on Senjutsu are solely written by him.
Yeah, so there's still a lot of stuff with Ari on there, but I think what's also interesting on this one is, and I'm surprised it really wasn't a single, was Die With Your Boots On, which is the sole Harris, Dickinson, Smith writing, which is also probably the one that is the most commercial sounding as well. Because that's the one thing I always see as kind of a hallmark of Adrian, is his stuff always tends to be more commercial than what Steve writes.
Definitely.
And so so that one there, it's like, oh, you can definitely hear Steve's influence on there. And it's really unique, because when you listen to that, you can also be like, oh yeah, but I can also hear that other like sound that at this point was kind of a Steve Harris thing too. Like if you listen to like the Trooper and stuff, and you hear it, that kind of thing in Die as well. So this definitely, I think, shows the different songwriting partnerships.
Yeah. Let's start talking about some of the songs on it. We're Eagles There is an amazing track. Fabulous, brilliant drumming from Nico.
Yep.
As an introduction to him in the band, like, you can't beat it. It really is a great, great song. And for a long time they didn't play it in the set.
Yeah.
Probably because it was really hard for Nico to play. Maybe I don't know. Maybe the other tracks are just more popular than that. But it really is a fabulous song. Revelations, the first track, I think Bruce wrote solely for Maiden.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant song as well.
I wasn't as big a fan of that one.
Oh, I love it. It's just so different to the first one.
Yeah.
It just adds a new dimension to the sound of the band. Flight of Icarus, we'll get into the Live After Death versions.
Yeah.
I don't want to, say a hell of a lot about it now, but I like the song, but I much prefer the version on Live After Death.
So I think what you hear on Live After Death as well, and what's important on that song, because you're right. Here, I was never like, ooh, really awesome. I mean, you got some good kind of studio histrionics from Bruce on here and stuff. But live, there's like a whole new level of pomp to the song that you get. And and you don't get it as much here. It's almost like the thing where, when you listen to the studio version of Cheap Trick's I Want You to Want Me, it's like, but then you listen to it on live at Budokan, and it's like, there it is. There's the missing link. And I think Flight of Icarus is the same thing between this and the live albums. Yeah. And when they do it live still now.
I think Die With Your Boots On.
I love that song.
Yeah, it's a great song, but I think at that stage, I don't think a record label was going to release 3 singles on a Maiden record.
No, and these are all two.
They weren't going to get any airplay.
Right.
Especially I don't know about over in the US, so they probably got next to nothing.
Right.
But in the UK, the radio weren't playing Maiden either.
Really?
So, So for them to get 2 singles was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, if they were going to do a third, I think this would have been, and I'm actually surprised, and there's got to be some kind of political machinations in here with band members and credits and all that, but I'm actually surprised that they didn't release Die With Your Boots On as the single instead of instead of Icarus. I mean, Trooper is a definite single, but I'm surprised that they released that.
Yeah, but Fly With Your Boots On is over 5 minutes long. So it's definitely not going to get played on the radio. Flight of Icarus is nearly 4, and the Trooper is just over 4.
Yeah,
they're going to play those.
Yeah, I mean, time-wise, you're probably right, but we were at a point now, at least here with FM, where they would play longer songs.
On regular commercial radio?
Yeah. Not an AM, but on FM, yeah.
So then we got The Trooper is a great song.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that's been a staple in the set for how long now?
Yeah, I can't really fault anything with that song, and that sounds great on the not on live either.
Yeah, and then you got Still Life, Dave Murray co-write. They're very rare.
Yeah. Wasn't a big fan.
I like that song. I wish they would have played that live over the years since this album came out, and they just don't. Just to mix it up for something from this record.
Yeah.
What I tend to find with this record is they always play the same songs live.
Mm-hmm.
With some of the other records, they might add one into the set every now and again.
Correct.
That's not played.
Especially some of the latter ones.
Yeah, maybe Where Eagles Dare is the one here that gets pulled out as a surprise every now and again. But it really is the Troopers always played.
Yeah, absolutely.
Flight of Icarus and Die With Your Boots On. And then maybe Revelations and Where Eagles Dare.
Mm-hmm.
Still Life. I can't recall that ever being in the set list after this tour. I'm sure someone might message me and say, you're full of shit, it's been played 10 tours. But I don't think so. The next two tracks, I'm not a massive fan of.
Yeah.
A lot of people think this is the best Maiden record.
Yeah.
When this album is great, it is great.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But I think there's a reason they're relegated to side 2.
Yeah. I think this is definitely front-loaded, this record.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely front-loaded.
Yep.
At this stage, they're an album a year plus touring. They're probably under pressure to write on the road. You got a couple of weeks off to write the whole record, to finish it and rehearse it, and then we go in the studio. We've got another tour booked. We need to get out there again. Yep. So what have you got? Here's what we got. Right. We just got to make do with this.
I think also, they sequenced it very cleverly because you're right. It is front-loaded on side 1. And when you flip it over on side 2, you've got the Bonanza with the Trooper as well. So it's like, so you're thinking, oh, great. Side 2 is going to be as awesome as side 1 is. And then you just kind of keep hoping.
And then you got Quest for Fire, like Steve Harris. I'm like,
Yeah.
And I think that's based on a movie. And then Sun and Steel, I think, is, that's Dickinson Smith.
Right.
That's easily the worst Dickinson Smith song on this record, written by either of them.
But I will say it is a really good Trooper beer. I managed to get myself a 4-pack of that, and it's a good lager.
Yeah. To Tame a Land. A lot of people love that song. The lyrics to me are, if you don't know anything about the movie Dune. Yeah. And the lyrics are convoluted.
I'm still not a fan of that one either. Like side 2 on this, it does die for me.
Yeah, it's not a bad epic, but the epics on Number of the Beast, like Hallowed Be Thy Name, is a much better song than this.
Yes.
It's okay way to end the record, but if the last 3 tracks had been anywhere near as strong as the first 5,
yeah, right,
you're talking probably one of the best metal albums of all time, in my opinion. Because a lot of people think this is their favorite Maiden record.
Yeah,
and there's people that do love all the songs on it, but I don't think it's consistently great.
Yeah, and I think part of that is probably the fact that you come off a Number of the Beast. You've got the new singer. You've got an elevated position for the band. There's a lot of expectation for this. And I think that in a lot of cases, the want to entirely love it overrides the whole sense of, do I really or don't I? And it's kind of like, that was kind of like, it became everybody's band at that point. I think that's part of why this is such a favorite to people.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe on this tour, I think they did shows with Priest, which would have been awesome. An album a lot of Maiden fans fondly look back on.
Yeah.
It really did cement the name of the band at the time, that the Number of the Beast was not a fluke.
Yep.
That Bruce was really coming into his own, new drummer.
A lot of changes. Definitely a critical album, and although I don't think it's 100% home run, I think they did deliver on kind of the promise of the prior release, which is good.
Yeah, definitely. So now
84.
We are on to Power Slave,
and I love the artwork on this.
Awesome.
So
Fucking awesome.
I actually have a Virgin Maiden vinyl pressing. So these were made as promotionals for radio stations.
Oh, great.
And
Nice.
so they're pretty rare. And but yeah, it's got the regular sleeve and all that. And
Whoever came up with the concept for this with the Egyptian theme is a fucking genius.
And what's amazing too is that my regular copy that I have, I still have I slit the shrink wrap, but I still have the shrink wrap on it. And I've only slit the shrink wrap very recently because I always played the radio pressing. I never played my actual purchased copy.
So that was sealed.
Yeah.
Why'd you fucking open it?
And I was curious and yeah. So, but yeah, this has been very recently. I still have some other ones from like the 70s and 80s that I actually never slid open, but yeah, this one here, like I said, the cover on this just like really grabbed me, and
there's a lot going on in the cover. This is a magnifying glass cover.
Yes,
there's a lot of hidden gems in this.
Right, and I think it's just overall, I think it's just this like amazing cover, and
awesome.
And some covers from Maiden, yeah, you can shrink them back to 4.5 inches, and the CD cover is like okay, but this is one of those covers that you need to see it as a 12 by 12. It just doesn't do it justice.
Paintings. These aren't computer generated things, where you can cut and paste and all that shit. This is the guy actually painted these.
Yep.
Incredible.
Yeah, and the other thing that's interesting with this is the amount of effort they had to make to cut this right, to get it to sound right, because this is just a hair over 51 minutes long.
Yeah.
Most albums are about 45.
Yeah.
So to have the depth of bass tone on this and get it in at 51 minutes, that's a feat.
There's a note, I believe it's in Live After Death, about that it says that only the best people in the world can do it, and we only employ the best.
And if you look at the width of the run out, it's smaller than a regular album. But this is cut insanely well. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate that this at 51, a little over 51 minutes, this is crazy that they were able to do it.
Yeah. And you have to wonder at this stage how much material they actually have to work with, because we've talked to enough bands and we've read enough over the years that they have their whole lives to make the first album, so they've got all these songs. And then the second record, they might have some stuff left over.
Yep.
And then they got to write a load of new stuff. But this is Maiden's, 5th record?
Yeah, I think part of their
in 5 years
is, and especially with Maiden has got two people that are voracious readers, mostly of history, but that they read a lot and they digest a lot. And I think that really helps with both Steve and Bruce with what they do. And I mean, it's a similar thing that, say what you want about Lemmy, but, a lot of his stuff was historic as well. And it's because he read history like a freaking madman.
He lived it.
And I think that
all the memorabilia and all that.
Oh, I know.
He was,
but
he lived
exactly. He did live it. And so that band had one guy doing that and having that depth, and he just kept punching out albums after album. This band, I think that's part of their thing, is that, and it's to this day still, that Bruce will go down a tangent on something on history, or Steve has that, and he's got a lot of these other varied interests too. And I think that really helps a lot with what they do.
And again, track 1, Steve Harris. Track 8, last track, Steve Harris. Opens with a Steve song, ends in a Steve song.
Yep.
The same as Peace of Mind.
Right. And like Peace of Mind, Aces High, just track 1, is single number 2, which is a Steve Harris, as opposed to single number 1, which is 2 Minutes to Midnight, which is a Dickinson Smith.
Yeah. Adrian definitely wrote the more commercial tunes. He still does.
He does, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the first single that they did off of Senjutsu.
Writing on the Wall?
Yeah, and when they played that, the first time I heard that on Sirius, I was like, Steve. Or Adrian, I'm sorry. It was like, yeah, it could just tell, boom, that it was. So it's, yeah, definitely he is that kind of writer. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you got Aces High. Fucking great song. It's
great song. Yeah.
I think it closes their set now, doesn't it?
And
I think it's the last song in the current tour. I'm nearly sure it is.
I don't remember.
And I know that it was in the tour that they did a couple of years ago. It was in that. You saw that tour, didn't you?
Well,
they had the plane coming out, and was that the?
It was earlier.
It's the opening track, was it? Or?
It was early. No, it wasn't the opening.
Third or
but
fourth?
It was earlier.
Early in the set.
Yeah, it was earlier in the set for the plane. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I love Aces High. Again, I'm pretty sure I have the single over there as well. Single cover's awesome as well, and I mean, still, they've even got a shirt just for this tour. That's the Aces High cover.
Of course, they have a shirt for the tour, because it'll sell.
Well, and that one does, because I tried to get it.
They all fucking sell.
They had made it as an event tee for the stop here, and yeah, it like sold out.
Gone.
Son of a bitch.
Gone. Yeah, 2 Minutes to Midnight, great song, great commercial song.
Yep.
Obviously couldn't come up for any lyrics for the instrumental. Lost for words.
Yep.
They actually did that live. I remember a friend of mine he had all the singles, and he taped all the B-sides for me back in the day when you got cassette tapes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have a C90 tape, and I remember he taped all the B-sides.
Yeah.
So he had the covers, and then he had some live tunes. And I remember Lost for Words was one of them. That they did actually play it live. And then of course Bruce starts writing about fencing.
Yep.
So you got Flash of the Blade.
Yep.
And the Duelists. I love the Duelists. That's Steve Harris. But Flash of the Blade is Dickinson.
Yep.
I love the fucking Duelists. I love the way it comes back in the end of it. I've always been a fan of that track. Back in the Village. It's decent.
That one there, like, I like it and then I don't. And I think what it is it's got this lilting character that I just feel like the melody's floating, and I don't know, for some reason I don't like that kind of lilting thing that happens on it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we need a fast song to open up side 2 and Back in the Village is it. And then of course you got the title track.
Yeah, which is
awesome.
Freaking awesome. Yeah.
Bruce Dickinson wrote that on his own. And then in my opinion, this is the best long song Maiden has ever released.
And also why the album has only got 3 tracks on side 2 and it's 51 minutes long.
This song is fucking amazing. I've said this before on the show. When it breaks down in the middle and then it comes back in right before the guitar solos, still gives me fucking goosebumps the way it builds and builds and builds. Yeah,
I mean, it is good, and I'm not a massive fan of Maiden long songs, but this one does have the movements fit together, and they're not just like self-aggrandizing musical wanking. That there's a reason for everything, and I really like Steve's bass work on this as well.
Yeah. But this is them really stretching out, especially on that song. There's nothing like that on any of the other albums that are anywhere near as as complicated as this.
Right.
There's no way in hell Paul Di'Anno could do that song.
No.
This is where the band were really comfortable with who they were, really comfortable with Bruce. Again, under pressure to get material out, but this record is home run. I think. Speaking
of Di'Anno too, I've got to give kudos to Maiden for stepping up and the willingness to help him out with his medical expenses.
Yeah, they did it with Clive Burr. They did shows on the.
They did the benefits and things like
tour.
that.
They did shows in London.
This was really good. I thought that was a good thing.
Did you see the video where Steve met Paul?
No.
In the wheelchair?
No.
Yeah, it's out there. I don't think Steve had seen Paul for years. And it was nice. Someone videoed it. They were having a laugh and a joke and a great time, and it was very cordial and things like that. So Maiden are class act.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
You know, they're very close-knit. They're a bit like AC/DC, where if you're in the inner circle, you're in, but for anyone that's outside it, you're outside.
Yeah.
The thing with Maiden as well is if you're... And Paul was part of the band, and
he's for the most part, always still spoke well of them.
yeah, he's made a lot of mistakes in his life.
Yeah, and so he's been pretty honest about things, and
he hasn't looked after himself very well. He's, you know, he did some spells in jail for fraud, and
hey, you do things.
You do things.
But yeah, I mean, I think another one of these. I definitely like this album more than I liked Peace of Mind. Part of it is absolutely the artwork. It grabbed you. It really made you think. It was definitely one of these ones where you could keep looking at it while you're listening and being like, holy, you know, I'm finding things. So it was a much more visual experience. I think also that the way that they really started to put all of that into the tour set and all of that, so incorporating all that imagery live is really where it kicks off on this album. And then you can see that, you know, even with this, right, so it bumps up to 2 in the UK, pops up to 12 in the US, which is pretty good. Considering, you know, overall mainstream accessibility for the album. It's not really, you know, at the top end for it, but I think that they made some really good strides with this one. I really do.
Yeah, well, the plan on this, when it came out, it's pretty obvious, was, right, we have the artwork, we have the songs, we're already thinking about where we're going to play, how big the venues are going to play, and what stage show we're going to do to incorporate it all in.
I mean, it's definitely, at this point, they have a cohesive plan for
because
it.
when you look at Peace of Mind and you look at the artwork, how can you transcend that to a big arena stage? You can't. But with the Egyptian theme, it's massive.
Correct.
You can fucking put it everywhere in the fucking building.
Right.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
And this was the one that blew them up, especially in the US. And they toured so much on this record that it nearly fucking killed them in the end.
Yeah, and hence you have a gap in studio albums
did
too.
you see this tour? Because when you look at the shows they did in the US, I know Twisted Sister did shows with them. They did 2 legs in North America, and they weren't small.
Yeah.
They were fucking huge. Like all the legs on this tour were long. Like I think they did like 165, 170 shows in total.
Focus.
And
Oh shit.
that's a fucking lot of shows.
Yeah, I mean, they toured their asses off on this, absolutely.
I think Quiet Riot did shows with them, and they were on Mental Health. In '84, Twisted Sister were on Stay Hungry, and Accept were on, was Balls to the Wall '84?
I think it was.
Okay, so the opening acts...
because I would have been on the radio then, and I believe that was '84.
And the opening bands, they weren't small.
Yeah.
They had albums that were selling.
Speaking of
All of
Accept, I don't know if you saw it,
Yeah,
but
they're
you know
playing-
the Volts
They're playing the Tupelo.
playing the Tupelo.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like, so they went from one pain in the ass place to get, and if you were the poor bastards that bought tickets for the Vault thinking, oh, well, that's a quick
2 hours.
hop for me, now they got to be like the
It's 2 hours away.
opposite end.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's good for us if we want to go,
Half an
because
hour.
it's a Thursday night, I think.
Half an hour.
But it's like, I'm thinking, wow, it's from one thing to another. But at least I'm glad that they did get another venue, because the other day when I looked, I'm like, son of a bitch, I know the Vault's closing. And they announced their tour dates, and it was still on there. It's like, what the hell? But yeah, so it's
They've
good.
moved. I know that a lot of people aren't interested in this, but they're trying to move as many shows out of there as possible. It's a pity that a venue like that shut, because it was one of the few venues in the area that were catering to bands like that. Like LA
Right. I
Guns
mean,
had
it was
just played there.
good. They booked a lot of bands in, but it's just in not a very accessible area.
That's what a lot of people were commenting on. That the venue was nice, it was a good size, but it can be a pain in the ass
Right.
to get to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you know,
similarly,
they did shows, and I'll hand it to them. I never went there. It was a little bit too far away, especially during the week. And well, I'm not going there now.
It's a drive, and when you're trying to get out of there, coming back here, it's a boring drive, which is a killer late at night. That it's just an absolute boring drive.
Okay,
but it's a similar thing back when there was a great club in Nashua in the 90s called Sharkies. And they booked all kinds of bands. I mean, Godsmack played there I don't know how many times. But it was the same thing. It was just if you were coming out of Boston or anywhere else, it just wasn't centrally located enough to make it viable, you know?
Right, so let's bring it back to Maiden.
So we kind of, a little tangent. But so let's talk, even though we're talking studio albums, we got to talk Live After Death, because this is Richie's gateway introduction to Maiden.
It's one of my gateway albums into metal. It was the first Maiden record I ever heard.
Right, and I can't look at this album without thinking about you talking about hearing these songs and then going back to the other albums and being, who the hell is this guy singing? Like, I just can't. I look at every time I look at this album, I think about this, that you started here. You heard these things that Paul sang originally. You only knew them by what Bruce was doing on them.
Yep.
And then going back and hearing it kind of in reverse.
Yeah, I didn't even know they had another singer for the first two records.
Yeah, and like I said, I can't look at this album without thinking.
So what I was saying earlier on about the live versions being better, Power Slave definitely on that. Yep. Definitely. It just... like on the studio album, it's din 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 din. On this, it's right. Everything is a lot faster.
Oh,
it's beefed up a lot more.
Well, you get the adrenaline rush that Nico's going through, and if you got a drummer that's getting an adrenaline rush, everything's going to pick up, and you hear it here.
Yeah, and the artwork. Oh my God!
Again, another one of these ones that. You come out of Power Slave, you had one thing, now you look in this one, and you're thinking, holy crap, there's just so many more things going on here.
Yeah, and I believe Crusher Jewel was who we had on from from Kerrang.
Yeah.
I believe he did the design on the inside. Yeah, he did a good few albums around that time. I believe that is one of them. But when you look at that gatefold sleeve, the front and the back are one picture, and when you open up the inside, it's the fucking stage show.
Yep, and you're right. The sleeve design is Crusher.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He did Born Again. He did Diary of a Madman. He did...
Not sure if he's going to want to admit Born Again, but...
No, he admits it.
No, I know. And it's just one of these...
But that's just some of the records that he did.
Yeah. Just Born Again is kind of one of those classic, the fuck?
Yeah, but a lot of people love that album cover because of it. It's like that, you know, that Death album, Leprosy?
Yeah.
That album cover? I put it up on Facebook there, I don't know, a while back, that, you know, that album cover was terrible, and fucking people went after me. That fucking album cover is fucking awesome. I'm like, okay. But stage show, sound, that's one of the best live albums of all time for me.
Well, you've also got like a really good mix here of all of this too, because I mean, they could have done something where they just did kind of, I'll use the reference back like Kiss, right? Kiss Alive 1, it's got those three albums before it. Kiss Alive 2, it's really the next three albums. There's nothing from the first three albums on there. This, they did it's like, it is the show. And it's a really good mix. And it's also, I mean, it really does serve as a really good, not a greatest hits, but it's a great introduction to everything Maiden.
What's missing on it? What would you put on it? What would you take off and put on? And what would you swap? It's very difficult.
It is.
Because I think one of the great things about that one is that I think it's side 4 is a different show. I think it's one of the Hammersmith shows in London. And the first three sides are Long Beach.
Yeah. I think what's side 2, which with Rhyme, Power Slave, and Number of the Beast. I don't know. It's almost like they should have put a couple of the other earlier ones with
There's only
Rhyme.
one track on Killers on it, isn't it? Ratchild.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think that is.
And the debut has got Iron Maiden, Phantom of the Opera is on that, isn't it? That's a Hammersmith show.
Phantom of the Opera is the last
It's
song.
a Hammersmith show, and Running Free.
Running Free is Long Beach.
Yeah, so three
Yeah.
shows, three tracks from the debut, one from Killers.
And I would have been disappointed if Running Free wasn't on here.
Yeah, I've said it already. I would have loved them We Were Eagles there on that. But Die With Your Boots On is on it, isn't it? The Trooper is on it.
Yeah.
Flight of Icarus is on it.
Yep. Even Revelations is on it.
Yeah, so you've already got 4 tracks of Peace of Mind. Yeah, how many songs are on that record?
So we won't count the intro and Churchill's speech.
Yeah,
But
what a fucking awesome
3, 4,
intro.
5, 6,
Come
7,
on.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
You 17 songs. Yeah, and that's what.
And I think that's part of the great thing is they did include that speech part because we're all. It's kind of like going to see or having a live Metallica album that doesn't have Ecstasy of Gold opening it up. It's like you need to have that.
Now you have a lot of Maiden stuff, right?
Yeah.
Over the years, you've got singles and all that stuff. I don't have as much as you. And you've got. I'm not saying you have unreleased stuff, but there's odds and sods that they've released over the years. You got that box set that with
Yep.
what's it called? Not Eddie's Head.
I can't remember what it's
Yeah,
called. I can't believe how much those things go for now.
A shit ton
It's
of
crazy.
money. Yeah. Have they ever released the whole show that's on side 4? I wonder where it is, if they have it.
I don't think they did. And I know that they've always had an issue with earlier days, too, of getting good soup to nuts audio and video for a particular show as well. So I don't think they have the whole show.
Okay, I'd love to hear that. Because it's Hammersmith Odeon,
Yeah,
right?
it's a different vibe.
Yeah, smaller
different
venue.
vibe.
At that stage, I think they were doing multiple nights at Hammer. I think that's the reason they recorded both shows there, is they were doing it multiple nights. They didn't have to move the equipment around. And
Yeah,
You
but
know,
I think it's
they
good.
could
I
pick
think
the
it's
best-
like I said,
best
a different
songs.
crowd. Definitely much more accepting of the variety, which is also an awesome reason why you'd want to hear that.
But the band at that stage, they're so tight. They've been on the road for so much playing the songs, and I'm sure they were sick of playing some of the songs at that stage.
Probably.
But the fucking show is awesome. Like the video. I haven't watched the video in years, but
Yeah.
I remember watching it and I was like, fuck me, what a fucking show.
Yeah.
You know, you got a lot of metalheads now that the likes of Scott Ian and all these guys.
Yeah.
That album was a fucking huge influence on him. That show was a huge influence on him. Like people talk about Kiss in the 70s being visually a fucking massive band
Right.
on them.
Yeah.
Fucking Maiden in the 80s. On that tour, you can't go to an arena and see that show and not come out going, holy fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They didn't have as kind of that whole, as much of a visual spectacle, but then they weren't basing their entire show on this just visual spectacle either. And they still run that balance now where you go to see them and you get amazing visuals, but it isn't like constant every song something's blowing up, exploding kind of thing. But it's consistent. It's really well done. It's really thought out and considerate. And yeah, I think they still put on an amazing show.
So a quick story on that. Kind of it's actually an embarrassing story. When I was 16 years old and that album was embedded in my brain, of course I had the denim jacket, and what were you putting on denim jackets at that stage? You were putting
back patches,
right?
Yeah.
So I had a big back patch of that album cover on the back of my denim jacket. And a guy in my class got killed in a motorbike accident, and I went to the funeral. And I'm walking into the church, and I realised that at a funeral, I had a live after death patch on my jacket. And I fucking ran outside and took it off and walked back into the church. I'm like, this is completely fucking inappropriate. And I'll never, ever forget that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am in intense pain, Pinky.
So now we move on.
Oh, yeah.
This was Bruce Dickinson's I'm going to write some Led Zeppelin type songs.
This was, well, the first thing always on this one, I always initially think this is definitely one of the high points in their cover art.
Yeah.
You know, that as far as...
We're talking about Somewhere in Time.
Yes, thank you, Somewhere in Time. Sheer messaging on here, it is absolutely insane if you're a Maiden fan. The amount of stuff that you just continue to just dig and dig and dig on this. And
well, what Maiden had done, they'd gone back in the past with the Egyptian team.
Yep.
And now they decided, right, we've done the thing in the past.
Yep.
We're going to go in the future now.
Yep.
And they went with a Terminator style Eddie.
Yep.
And yeah, it's a fucking awesome album cover. In some ways, there's too much going on in it.
Yeah, but again, this is really the thing that I used to love about listening to albums too, was to just sit down there, put it on, and you're just reading the liner notes and staring at the cover and trying to figure out what you don't know on here. And I think, now I think people can go and go online and find out everything on the cover or whatever. But I mean, why would you want to have that?
There's some clever stuff on it. Aces High Bar.
Yeah.
It's got West Ham United 7, Arsenal 3.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that one.
The time was 23:58, 2 minutes to midnight.
Yep.
It's got the Ruskin Arms, Long Beach Arena.
Yeah. They've got the Bradbury Towers to go back to Ray Bradbury. They got L'Amour's, which is a classic club.
Got the TARDIS up there. That's Doctor Who.
Yep.
It's just a lot of fucking clever shit in here.
Yeah, I mean, you just keep going in and you just keep finding, more and more. And there's the obvious things in here, too, like, Icarus falling down from the sky, You
got the pyramid in the back.
Yep.
Go harken back to Power Slave. But this was the record, I believe, that Bruce came in with some material and Steve says, what the fuck are you bringing to the table? I think Bruce even said himself, they were all fried at the end of the World Slavery Tour.
Yep.
And they had, again, the management and the label, you got to come up with a new record. And this was another one that was, did they go back to Nassau again? They did. So this is the third record. They're in the Bahamas. There must be some nice bars in the Bahamas. Who else recorded there? Anthrax recorded there, didn't they?
A lot of people.
Among the Living.
A lot of people did.
Who else went there? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anybody else. I know Anthrax did. The Police, I think, did Synchronicity there. Or Ghost in the Machine. I know they're not a metal band, but I love them anyway. Yeah, there's a lot of bands went there. But this record again, open track, Steve Harris. Closing track, Steve Harris. This really is it's a Steve and Adrian record. Bruce wrote nothing on it. I think he said he was fried. Just couldn't really write anything that was in the vein of what Maiden wanted at the time.
Yeah.
So Bruce and Adrian were left with the lion's share of writing the material. And of course, this is the one with the synths,
which became really. I mean, even Priest was doing that as well, and yeah, definitely this became a thing to do, to have the synth stuff. Yeah,
it's interesting that Priest get a lot of flack for doing it. Maiden, I don't think as much. I've often wondered why. Were Priest more contrived in their look and the way they were approaching it, that we are going to write radio singles, where Maiden just wrote Maiden songs and with a touch of synth on top?
Well, it was they were writing Maiden songs, but they were using synth guitars in a way that they were trying to emulate all of their guitar sounds. So the idea of, we can make this, we can be more controlled in the sound and make things sound slicker, but we still want to sound like we're playing, a Les Paul or a Strat through a Marshall and not something different, where when you listen to like what Priest did on Turbo, then you get what is this? You kind of get this other kind of fizzy, brittle sound, and it's more obvious that, that's something different. It's a really processed, either it's a really processed guitar or it's another, or they're doing something with synth. It was obvious that they were making music with something different.
I also think that Steve Harris would never write songs with lyrics like Wild Nights, Hot and Crazy Days, and Hot for Love.
No. But I mean, I like pretty much every damn thing in the Priest catalog except for Nostradamus, and it's just, hey, it's what you have for lyrics. But yeah, you would never have Steve Harris doing anything like that.
Yeah, I love Turbo.
Yeah, I mean, it took a lot of flack, but I think that if you go back and you listen to it again, if you hated it, I think you're going to come away with, hey, wait a minute, this actually had some hooks in here, and it was well produced, and I think you come away with a different appreciation for it than you might have initially.
Yeah. So this record has, how would I describe this one? When we did the top 5 Martin Birch records.
Mm-hmm. If you're interested, that is episode 470 from back in September of 2020, and that's still available up at focusonmetalpod.com, as well as Amazon Music and on iTunes.
I think I picked Power Slave as my number one, for many reasons, which I already explained on that show. Sentimental value, quality of song, sound, artwork, the whole sound, the whole production. It was either Power Slave or Somewhere in Time I was going to pick. So this record it's like Live After Death to me. It's Live After Death to be 1, and this record will be 1A. When it comes to gateways with Maiden.
Yeah. Well, this is also really interesting because, it's got 2 Adrian Smith singles, right? The singles, they're both Adrian, and they're clearly Adrian. And,
fabulous songs.
To this day, still, and I think I've said it before, one of my favorite Maiden songs still is Wasted Years.
Great song.
And
great song.
I don't know how many other people I have recordings of with them covering it too, but I don't think I've heard a bad cover yet of this song.
Did you hear the version that Adrian did last year with Richie Kotzen? They went and did shows together, and Wasted Years was one of the songs they played.
No, I didn't hear that.
It's interesting. You should go back. There's video out there. Go and listen to it. It is interesting the way they redid it, because Richie Kotzen is not the metal guy,
right?
It's well worth worth a listen.
But I mean, between that one and then with Stranger in a Strange Land, which that song really, if you listen to it, that could have easily have been a Dickinson Smith song, because it does have some of the Bruce Dickinson sensibilities on it, and you could almost hear that on a Bruce solo album.
Stranger in a Strange Land is a great fucking cover art. It's got like the Clint Eastwood cowboy, Eddie.
Yeah.
Fucking fabulous.
Yeah. But that, like I always think of that one as that could be a Bruce one as well. And live, he definitely loves singing it.
Yeah. But opening track, Hot Somewhere in Time, brilliant. Wasted Years, brilliant. Sea of Madness, hidden gem on this record as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. Heavy, heavy, heavy.
Yeah.
Heaven Can Wait is another great song. They're all fucking great on this, to be honest with you.
And Heaven Can Wait, that one's another anomaly on here, because Heaven Can Wait almost reminds me of an Adrian song, but it's a Harris song.
Yeah. Then you got Stranger in a Strange Land, fabulous single. The 2 singles over 5 minutes long. I don't recall them getting played that much, even on Top of the Pops. The radio in England mostly ignored them.
Yeah, well, Strange is almost 6, so yeah, that's definitely a longer one.
Murray Harris, Deja Vu, probably one of the weaker tracks on the record. Alexander the Great's 8.5 minutes long. Not one of Steve's best epics. Not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
It's long for the sake of being long. It's got this long intro. Great guitar solos in it, though.
And the other part of that, I mean, that's one of those harbingers of what they started to do consistently on latter albums, which is those long intros. And in some cases, I remember the first time I listened to Final Frontiers, I was like, oh, fuck me, another long intro. And then some of them over time have grown on me and been like, okay, it's not as aggravating as it originally was, but this is definitely starts to be a harbinger of that stuff. And then the other one you missed on here is Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner as well, which again is not really one of my favorite tracks. I'm always more of the, and when we talk about short Maiden songs, it's like, 5 or less kind of a deal that I'm more of a fan of than the longer ones.
Steve Harris on this one wrote the fast tracks, more or less. Caught Somewhere in Time is fast. Loneliness of a Long Distance Runner is fast. Deja Vu is fast. The slower, measured songs seem to be from Adrian. Mm-hmm. Heaven Can Wait is Steve. That's fast.
I was going to say, that's like a mid-paced.
Yeah. This record, I think, when it comes to set lists, definitely gets overlooked. I've seen the band a few times now. I've seen them do Heaven Can Wait, and I think that was on the No Prayer for the Dying tour. Or might have been over here, and they did Wasted Years. I've never seen them play anything else.
Yeah, and they still pretty much consistently play Wasted Years as well.
So when they go back and they do the classic shows from the eras, you always get the 3 or 4 from Peace of Mind, the 3 or 4 from Power Slave, and all the rest of the records. You get one from this.
Yeah, and it's usually Wasted.
It's normally Wasted Years, and I don't know why. I think the title track is fabulous. Or not Caught
Although
Somewhere in Time.
they have been throwing in Heaven Can Wait more often.
Not really. But it's always either that or Wasted Years if they're going to play anything, and it's normally Wasted Years.
Wasted Years is usually always on it.
I think the last time I saw Maiden, when they played Wasted Years, it was the very last track.
Yes, on the wasn't Legacy
Somewhere Back in Time tour, was it?
Well, the tour they did for
Made in England.
The tour that they did for Book of Souls.
Yeah, that one. The last song was Wasted
and
Years.
I remember because we bolted, and as we got out in the parking lot, it was son of a bitch. We just missed Wasted Years.
Yeah,
we were both pissed. We were pissed.
But I think this album is, I think the band unfairly malign it. And I understand they've got a fucking shitload of tracks that they have to get in the set, but I think this album definitely deserves more love. And I would have loved to see a professionally shot concert or even a live record from this tour. Right.
And there is some footage, but again, it's another one of these things where they just didn't do it right. And it's very dim and it's like, what are you guys thinking? And I'm sure there's some reason behind it, but yeah.
Yeah, I wish they'd play Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah.
In the set, because that's a fucking great arena rock track. And they just never fucking play it.
Yeah.
And it's a single. Like, they'll play album cuts ahead of that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fucking play that. Like, I know Maiden fans are rabid and they know every song, but, if you're a kind of a casual fan and you know if you know Maiden's 80s era, Stranger in a Strange Land is one of the songs you know.
Yeah. I just think maybe, too, with this one, where they are, mentally, is you start to see, like you kind of alluded to, there's cracks forming, there's people burning out, people questioning about what they're doing and all that. And, I think this album has a lot of that happening, which then the follow-on is then what happens with the next album after this, where it's kind of like, well, that's a change. And, you know, it's to me, it's kind of almost a step change when they go to that one as well. So I think that, yeah, there's probably just some mental kind of prejudice on this one on their part.
Bruce, I didn't write anything on the record. It's not a record I'm really attached to as much as the other ones.
Yeah.
You can tell me now if I'm wrong, but to recreate those songs live, can you do it without the guitar synths?
Yeah. You can.
Easily?
Yeah, you can.
Easily get that sound now with that? Or
yeah.
It doesn't date the songs as much?
No, I don't think so. And even if they needed to do it, so when this was being done, I mean, it's amazing that things sound as good as they do, knowing where guitar synth technology was at this point in time. Because
very hit or miss, was it?
The tracking was shitty, to say the least. So you really had to be thinking about what you were playing, and if you like tried to play a chord with the wrong patch, it sounded like crap, and it was just, you really needed to invest a lot of time and a lot of technology to be able to do that. It's not like it is now where, you know, I can pull out, you know, my Electro-Harmonic Synth 9 and pop it in, and it will track beautifully with the guitar.
I think the band were tied in with the image that it's a futuristic artwork image.
Yeah.
We're going to try and get as modern as we can with technology to tie in with all of
that. Well, the guitar synth stuff also was very, very big at that point because, you know, you really had...
did it?
No, and again, it was because of the fact you needed to have special pickups and, you know, and all of that stuff. So it was tough. And I mean, I can remember with Daddy's Junkie Music up in Nashua and being great friends with Matt, who was the manager. We could walk in and he would let us play and mess with anything. And he had a big synth setup that was done with all these different synth brains, all midied up with a guitar nicely adjusted. And I can remember I picked that up and I started playing one of our originals. Jeff's in the back, like looking at drum stuff. And all of a sudden he hears the opening of one of our originals, which was really kind of more of an acoustic thing, but he's hearing it played by strings and organs, and he just turned around like, what the hell am I, like, that's our song, what the, and he just looks over, and I'm just me, but I'm playing like 15 parts at the same time, and it was, so for that, it tracked really well, but if I had just tried to rip on a major bar chord, the whole thing would have just sounded like a giant fart, you know, but now, you know, I can go and do the same thing with much less expensive technology and get like amazing stuff. I can remember that, you know, one of the guys used to come over to the house and I would do recording for, and I did the B9. And he was like, wow, I've never seen that. And he was a huge Deep Purple fan. And so he went and I plugged it all in and he just started ripping on Speed King and doing the kind of the organ guitar part, and he was like, holy shit, I'm playing both parts at the same time and it's perfect. And it was like, yeah, and that's like just like a little $200 pedal.
Putting someone out of a job.
You know, so it's the technology's come a long, long way. So now a lot of the guitar synth stuff you don't even need to have the special pickups anymore. Just plug in and you go.
How many of those tours did you catch? Did you catch the Peace of Mind tour?
I don't remember catching that one.
Power Slave, World Slavery Tour. Did you see that?
I think that one I did see. I don't remember where it was. Might have been the Centrum.
Somewhere in Time tour.
I don't remember about that one either.
I believe Vinnie Vincent and Yngwie did shows over here on that tour. Maybe Wasted.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Pete Way and Steve were tight because Steve's a massive UFO fan.
I mean, I definitely didn't get to go to as many shows then as I do now, or I was working them. And in some cases, you didn't really get to see much because you were working them.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, but at that stage, again, the band were arena act in America. They were Madison Square Garden. They were probably back in the Long Beach Arena again. I think in the UK, though, they were doing multiple nights in... I still think they were in the Hammersmith Odeon and all that. But they wouldn't just play one of the great things I always found about Maiden, especially when it comes to UK, not so much Ireland, which I'll get into in a future episode, but they weren't stingy when it came to doing dates in their own country. That they'd still tour up and down the country a fair bit
And
do multiple nights.
at small venues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think at heart, and you still see it when Steve's out with like British Lion too, at heart, they're still that club band. You know, they're still that little club band playing the Ruskin Arms. You know, it's still that, and I think that's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I really applaud him for doing, Steve. He doesn't have to do that.
Right.
I believe there was a festival recently that British Lion played, and Steve did their set and then did Maiden's set that night.
I think so.
That's fabulous.
But yeah, I think that's great. I think it also proves that as a band and the stuff that they write, that they don't need to have like the giant production values to actually go and play that stuff either. So it says a lot. You know, you talk about bands that if it sounds great on acoustic, it's going to sound great on electric. But you have a lot of bands now in metal where to really get the impact, they have to have that big, huge sound. But Maiden's still one of those bands that can go in and just play their asses off in a little club and just make the impact. It's awesome.
Wouldn't you love to see that Maiden just go somewhere and play in a club?
Oh, fuck yeah.
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 I wish more bands would do that.
Yeah.
They just don't want to, and I don't blame them. Because at this stage in their lives, they're all in their like mid-60s,
Yeah.
so they want to go and play in a club.
Well,
I did that for fucking 4 years.
Well,
in the
I mean,
beginning.
what's great is like, I'm going to be going to see Last in Line in a little club in Worcester in the fall. And we're talking, it's a small
this year?
club. Yeah.
When are they playing?
I'll look on my phone and get the date. But
Yeah,
I mean,
didn't fucking know that.
the club they're playing is probably maybe 2 times the size of this place. It's not big. And the stage is tiny because I'm going to be like, how the hell are they going to get Vinny's drums on there? But yeah, they're playing a small club in Worcester.
Yeah, when we're done here, I want the date. I'm going to that.
And it's
definitely.
I know I have it on there. I think it's September, but yeah, I'll
Okay.
find out. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So let's wrap it up. That's,
All right.
That's the next tree.
Yep.
And then we're on to the next tree and the next tree
Yeah.
and the next tree.
They get
We'll
harder
them
after
done.
this. This is,
Think
to
so?
me, this is prime. Then after that, I start to have a little more difficulty, but these are
Right.
prime.
No, difficulty, it mightn't be as much, it's fabulous, but there's
Yeah.
still a lot to talk about.
There is. It's the shock and awe is kind of, to me, is all on this end of it and not so much on the other end of it.
Yeah, I still get stuff from the other records.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to that.
All right.
We'll get
Yeah.
to that eventually.
Awesome. Well, good. Knock another 3 out. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
And stay tuned for the next chunk.
Yep.
All right. So with that, that's all there is. There ain't no more. Stick a fork in it. This puppy is done. So for myself and
The Irons.
have yourselves a great metal week. And until we talk to you again, as always, remember.
Focus on metal.
Everything else is insignificant.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.